Hi there, I'm Alyson Fair, a consultant here at Blue Sky Strategy Group, and I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleagues Neil Brodie, Geoff Turner, and Cam Holmstrom for this episode of What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. Hello, everyone. How are you guys?
Morning. Good.
Not too bad.
Excellent. So we're near the end of week 4. We now have, this week was the big unveil of the Liberal platform. So we can say with the 3 major parties, we now have platforms for each. What I want to talk about today are those platforms, the good, the bad, the ugly, and one particular thing I'd like to start with you, Geoff. Do these platforms really matter when it comes to voters? Do they pique their interest and make them go either way towards, a Liberal, Conservative, or NDP government?
I think platforms remain very important. I don't think you can have an election without putting out a type of plan that speaks to what you're intending to do. Those plans can vary all the way from very limited, very small directions. And I'm thinking in this case of the Progressive Conservative election in Ontario in 2018. Very little in the way of plan, a few gimmicky things like buck a beer, a few promises to end hallway medicine, but no actual plans to back that up. That's about as thin as you can get, but it's still something. You can't get away with just being like a platform. What's that? So it has to be there, and people would notice if it wasn't, of course. The second thing I'll say is that platforms, of course, I think are getting more and more detailed, and there's been a significant amount of conversation about on each of the parties in the federal scene this election have submitted fairly hefty, in the somewhere just under 100 pages range of promises with dozens and dozens and dozens of items within them. And I was thinking about this in the terms of, I think voters more and more, especially as we're more connected, we get more direct news feed, people speak more to each other on social media and share what they heard about politics. I think you need to have the pieces that go along with all the different pieces of the electorate. And people will more and more demand that a party has a specific plan for the issues that they care most about. And if you think about the electorate, that's a wide number of issues, and you can tailor that issue to who your voter pool is. But I think especially if you think about the younger generations, people with families, they really want to know the specifics of your plan on climate change, on plastics, on daycare, on animals. There's all kinds of things that people will resonate with. And if they don't see that you have a specific plan, I think in this modern context, I think they actually have a good chance of writing you off for somebody who may actually have a more detailed piece in their platform versus yours. So I think there's a real need for parties trying to get something into everybody's hand for the issue that is most important to them. And they're very sophisticated, of course, and my colleagues will probably touch on this, in targeting those things to the people who have effectively raised their hand and say they're interested in that issue in an effort to do so.
So Neil, speaking to what Geoff had to say there, and pocketbook items and the niches, the dares, how do you think each plan that we were given by all the parties, targeted those areas? Did they do it well? I know, look in the case of the Conservatives, we had puppy mail bans, and we had the holiday on the HST, the month holiday. We didn't see those in the other plans, but are those the type of things that voters are more attracted to?
Well, I think, as Geoff said, you have to tailor bits and pieces to each portion of the population you believe you can garner votes from. For the Conservative platform in particular, one of the tropes that's run out by the Liberal left is always that Conservatives have a hidden agenda. Well, at 160 pages for their platform, I don't think they hid anything in that. The Liberal platform, 80 pages. There's a lot of content in there. I would say it's kind of short on detail, but it's long on promises. And to be honest with you, I haven't read the NDP platform, so I'll trust Cam, our buddy there, to talk about that. Are platforms necessary? I don't think a wide swath of the Canadian population reads platforms, but it allows opinion leaders to read the platforms and then write about them, whether it's on social media or through the news media, to amplify.
Is that how they get to the voter then? Is we the political heads, love it and breathe it. read it, and then we put out our aspects, and that's where the voters get the information then?
100%. Our job is to read it, but we also have lives, so I don't necessarily read as much sports news as I used to. Every Canadian has something better to do with their time than read a political platform, just like Canadians have better things to do than read a 700-page budget. And so it's up to people like us, as you said, or other opinion leaders across the country to read it, digest it, and pump out what they believe are important pieces. And that's how Canadians get their information on platforms.
And in a word, Alyson, just to add a term to it, it really is almost a fact check document for journalists and others to hold campaigns to their word throughout the campaign. So it functions that way. And to Neil's point, average voters aren't picking up the 90 pages and reading the hundreds of bullets in there. They're going to surf the website, go to the key 5 areas that they're highlighting. But yeah, it's exactly that. It's filtered through observers and the media.
So Cam, in terms of the platforms,
pharmacare, whereas that had been a big platform promise and something that all of a sudden just magically disappeared. And Mr. Trudeau assures us it's still on the agenda, yet it's not on paper. So again, it's that dissonance of, you're saying this here in writing, but you're not saying that. When it comes to what it says about the parties, so I think it does speak to that micro-targeting aspect of things, about just where the agenda they're trying to set when they're putting out there, even right down to the cover. And let's be honest, it's a shame that many people aren't going to read that conservative platform, if not just for the Mike Holmes cosplay Photoshop, or not Photoshop, photo at the front of it. I did not mean to say Photoshop.
They'll get it confused with their Men's Health magazine on the coffee table.
Anyway, but it's interesting for a document that no one reads. It was a nice cover. The point is, though, is that it's one of these things where it is it's much more of a marketing document than it is a governing document. And yes, there are people that are looking for the numbers to be there, and they should be. They're looking for the details to be there, and they should be as much as possible. But at the same time, for most people, it comes back down to will. Because I think that's the one thing with platforms that's important to remember, is that it's all fine and good to make promises in a nice book at the beginning of the campaign. If you don't follow through on them, it doesn't mean it's just a reminder that you don't follow through any words. I never got to read the Jean Chrétien's Red Book because I was 14 at the time, but I'll tell you, I know a lot about the broken promises that never came to be, that were put down in that lovely document that never became legislation.
So I want to go back to what you said there. You mentioned that the costing, and so comparing between the three, we got the Liberals who gave us a fiscal plan and costing, and the Conservatives and NDP did not include that in their
but I'm not going to interrupt, Alyson. I feel this is a false framing, because what happened was the parliamentary budget officer now has a function to do this, and he very clearly stated at the beginning, because the government was putting a snap election, he may not have the opportunity to do that. The government has control of these things; they're able to do that automatically. That put the other parties at an automatic disadvantage, and I honestly believe that was part of the calculus for calling the campaign, to make it sound like, oh, the others are trying to hide their numbers. No, they're not. The PBO has a job, and unfortunately, the government calling and earning elections actually made it harder for that independent verifier to do their job.
Okay, so on that point, I'm going to get you two to react to that. Neil first, then Geoff.
Yeah, I mean, the election was called on a snap basis 2 Sundays ago. My understanding is the Conservative platform went into the PBO either that day or the next morning as it was released publicly, and the PBO is working on it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Geoff. I think the Liberal platform just uses Liberal generated numbers. I don't think that platform has been gone through the PBO.
It's PBO certified.
Yeah. It's PBO certified?
I'll agree that the Liberal, like the people, they would have access to numbers to understand how much things cost from finance. Not that they're running platform promises through finance to get quotes. That's not what I'm saying. But the people working on that platform know how to draw on the fiscal plan to put it together, and they have access to that fiscal plan.
The only other thing I'd say about that is the Liberal platform promises, I think it was $75 billion worth of new spending, and $25 billion of new revenue. So they're already running a $50 billion deficit with their platform. So those are interesting things.
You know what? That was
to
a great
talk about.
input. I really like the fact that you kind of the government kind of has would you agree, a foot forward in that department, Geoff?
For sure.
Right?
Well, maybe here's where I'll start off. I'd say the people writing the Liberal platform are the same people writing budgets, right? And you can see that for those of us who did read the document, or if you go and look at the PDF version versus the web version, you'll see it is very much structured like a budget. Here's what we have done in the past years. Here's what we've done in our most recent, suite of commitments and what's underway. And then here's the following, X number of things that we are promising to do new. To our earlier conversation, that format is not exactly accessible to most readers who would be voters. You're not going to deliver that copy on the door. And that's why we were talking about it being sliced and diced and distributed. I think the Liberals are trying to position themselves, continue to try to position themselves as a governing party that has an existing platform, an enormous platform, as all of our listeners will know, in the 2021 budget, and all of the various pandemic response programs and spending that has been a feature of our last 18 months. And I think on the costing front, it is important. I think people want to know that. I did catch a fact from the Liberals' communications around their platform that with the economic growth experienced this year, even with that additional 75 billion of commitments, to Neil's point, net about 50 billion in net commitments in the platform, that actually fits within the existing fiscal plan. And they were pretty clear in saying to people that that basically the fiscal track established in the budget this spring is maintained, even with those added expenditures, because economic growth has been higher. So they're actually not adding to the deficit according to that math in this current year. But of course, it's new commitments, and it's based on economic growth coming out of the pandemic.
Before we wrap up, I want to quickly go around to each one of you. Cam, I'll start with you. What are you looking for as we enter week 5? We've got finished a debate last night in Quebec. We have 2 more coming Wednesday and Thursday. What are you looking for from the campaign this week?
I'm looking for 2 things. One, I'm looking for watching some of the trending, the polling after Monday, after Labor Day, after people have had an opportunity to get together with family, kind of that we always see it around campaigns, especially in the spring and the fall, either be around Easter or around Thanksgiving, when families get together, start talking, and all of a sudden start comparing notes and people start really turning their mind to the campaign. I want to see if there's any movement there, but also let's just be real. The big show is going to be Thursday night. Like, I think a lot of the campaign's going to come down to that night. And you saw it last night with the TVA debate. Everyone had their strategy. You could tell who was going into the debate strong and who was on the defensive. I'm gonna be curious to see just the posture all 4 leaders take into that debate on Thursday night, and what it says about where they're going. Like, I expect it to be, if last night's was pretty fiery at points, I expect that debate next week to be quite the show.
Okay, Neil, your thoughts.
Well, as Mr. Trudeau's numbers remain soft, if they remain soft, I look for the level of crazy rhetoric to increase. You're getting down to the finals, the final days of the election. What is there, 15 days left, 16 days left, full days left? If Mr. Trudeau's numbers remain soft, he'll get angry. I don't know if voters will warm up to an angry Justin Trudeau. If Mr. O'Toole's numbers remain strong, he can be the happy, carefree person. But all parties will start digging up dirt and throwing mud as much as they can.
And final word to you, Geoff. What are you going to be looking for during week 5?
Well, interesting, thinking of the balance of the campaign. In terms of the air war, the high-level battle, definitely having Trudeau and O'Toole square off in English will be important. The French language debates are important for the Liberal versus Bloc fight in Quebec, but the Trudeau versus O'Toole fight is, and with Jagmeet Singh potentially playing the spoiler, that's going to be very pivotal for this. And I think the campaign that last 2 weeks will be definitely a much stiffer match. And the Liberals will be looking to gain ground and finish with momentum. And to Neil's point, I don't know if Mr. O'Toole will be able to sit back and be comfortable. If he does, I'd like to think that that's an advantage for the Liberals to go after him, but we'll see.
All right. Well, it will be an interesting week 5 that's for sure. It'll have us all of our eyes glued to television sets and online. So thank you, Neil, Geoff, and Cam, for joining me today. And thank you to the viewers for watching this episode of What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Blue Sky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com. Blue Sky Strategy Group is a proud member of the Global Communications Alliance.